G'day and welcome back to Maintenance Break. I'm Pete and I've got Drew here with me as always.
G'day Pete and mate, today's one hits close to home for anyone who's ever been elbow deep in a strut replacement on a haul truck.
It does. We're looking at Safety Alert SA24-04 out of New South Wales, link in the show notes, where a worker copped a serious laceration to the upper leg when a rear suspension strut pivoted and swung back and hit him while the team was trying to sort out a fouled top pin. And I want to be clear about the forces we're talking about here. These rear struts on a haul truck aren't light components. We're talking about hydraulic cylinders that can weigh hundreds of kilos. When something that size pivots and swings, there's nothing forgiving about it.
And when you read through the circumstances, it's not a case of cowboys ignoring the rules. They had a JHA, they had the OEM procedure in front of them, they were trying to do the right thing, and it still went wrong. That's actually what makes this one sit with you a bit longer than most.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to talk about. Because if it can happen to a team doing the right things, it can happen anywhere. So let's break it down through the JEBS PCR Triad. Performance, cost, and risk. Because there are real lessons here for every maintenance team working around heavy plant.
Starting with performance. The team was replacing a rear strut with the dump body still on the truck, which meant the overhead crane was completely out of the equation. So they went to a forklift with a lifting jib and a sling to get the lower pin in. That worked. But when they tried to lift the cylinder to get the top pin home, the outer chassis bush fouled and the forklift jib couldn't finish the job. So they pulled the forklift out and brought in a work platform for better access to the top pin area.
And here's where the performance gap really shows itself. The site actually had a dedicated rear strut lifting jig, one that was compatible with the strut cylinder. But not all workers knew it existed. Not everyone was confident it worked across different classes of haul trucks on the fleet. And critically, its use wasn't written into the procedure for the task. So the right tool, the fit-for-purpose tool, was sitting somewhere on site, and nobody reached for it when the plan started to unravel.
That's a process failure, not a people failure, and that distinction matters. If your fit-for-purpose tooling isn't clearly labelled, isn't communicated out to the crew doing the work, and isn't referenced in the procedure, it might as well not exist. You can't use a tool you don't know about.
And that's a management and planning responsibility, not just a trades responsibility. The procedure should have called it out. The pre-job should have confirmed it was on site and ready. Those are the gaps that need closing.
Now, the cost side of this is significant, and as always, we start with the human cost, which you simply can't put a number on. A serious laceration to the upper leg, the pain, the recovery time, the impact on that bloke and his family. That's the real ledger entry here.
But then the operational costs stack up fast. You've got a site investigation, a notification to the regulator, and almost certainly a hold placed on that class of work across the fleet while controls are reviewed and verified. Then you've got procedure rewrites, retraining across the maintenance crew, and the planning disruption that comes with pulling a task type out of the schedule at short notice. The cost of documenting that lifting jig into the procedure and training the crew on it before this job? A few hours of someone's time. The cost of not doing it? You're staring at it right now.
It's that iceberg again, Pete. The visible bit is the injury and the immediate investigation. But underneath the waterline is weeks of lost productivity, retraining, procedure rewrites, and planning headaches, all of which should have happened before anyone picked up a tool.
And that brings us to risk, which is really the heart of this one. The OEM procedure was being used. It listed component weights, but it didn't specify how to actually control the load during removal and replacement. There were no defined hold points. There was no fallback documented for when the planned lift method didn't work out. So when the situation changed, and in the field, situations always change, The team was left to improvise without a documented safety net.
And the moment they removed the sling and the forklift without an independent means of restraint on that strut, they had a suspended load held only by a partially inserted top pin. When the pin bent slid far enough out that it no longer captured the cylinder, it pivoted. That's your risk fully realised, Pete. A completely preventable outcome that, without the correct safe operating procedure documented to support the work, left the crew exposed to injury.
The regulator's recommendations out of this are worth reading in full, but the ones I want to highlight are these. First, identify your pivoting, swinging, and sliding load hazards before the job starts, not once you're already in the middle of it. Second, make sure your fit-for-purpose lifting jigs and restraint devices are clearly labelled and your people are actually trained on them. And third, build hold points into your procedures, real hold points, where someone physically confirms the controls are in place before the next step begins, independent of the person doing the task where possible.
That last one is the big one for me. A hold point isn't bureaucracy. It isn't a slowdown. It's the thing that creates a pause in the job where someone asks, are we actually safe to move to the next step? That pause is what was missing here.
All right, let's close out with the brake tip for this week. Before your next cylinder, suspension, or driveline component replacement goes on the board, pull the procedure and ask one question. Does it call out an independent means of restraint for the component at every stage of the lift? Not just the first lift, every stage. If the answer is no, or if the lifting jig isn't referenced and your crew hasn't been trained on it, that's your gap. Close it before the job starts, not after someone gets hurt.
Simple question, massive difference.
If you found this useful and want to use it as a discussion point at your next pre-start, head to www.jebsadvisory.com, where you'll find this and other toolbox resources to share with your team. And if you're getting value from the show, please like, subscribe, and pass it on to a mate in the industry. It's how we keep growing this thing.
Until next time, take care.
And keep those assets running.